right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, thanks, Joseph.
Thanks, Jenna. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to a very special Helicon West featuring Alyssa Quinn, who we claim as our own. She's moved on, but featuring our own Alyssa Quinn. My name's Millie Tillis. I'm going to be your MC tonight. I'm going to start with our mission statement. Helicon West is a live reading series that brings published local writers to read alongside community members in an open, uncensored forum. In order to promote the voice of every community member and democratic ideals, we honor all levels of skill, ability, and craft. In addition to featuring published authors to give the literary arts more exposure in Cache Valley and its surrounding areas, we invite and celebrate aspiring writers from every walk of life to find and share their voices with us. We are committed to the causes of inclusion, accessibility, and representation in the writing community. Helicon West operates on the territory of the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation, whose people have been living, working, and residing on this land from time immemorial. We acknowledge that these lands carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We recognize elders past and present as people who have cared for and continue to care for the land. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous self-governance, history, experiences, and resiliency of the Native people who are still here today. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Bear River Heritage Area, the Logan Library, Sugar House Review, the Utah Humanities, and our founder and matron saint, Star Colebrook, who I don't think is here or isn't here yet, and the Cache Valley Center for the Arts for this beautiful current home with unfortunately not enough chairs in it. If you would like to read during the open mic portion, and I hope you will, please find our sign-up sheet. I'm going to have it pass around a little bit, and then it'll be near the front too if you'd like to come up and read. We're a very friendly bunch, so please do. Each reader will have about 7 minutes to read for us, and after 7 minutes, you will be politely clapped off of the stage. All of our Helicon West events are recorded and posted to our Helicon West YouTube channel, but if you do not wish to be recorded, simply make a note when you sign up, and we'll turn it off during your turn. Okay, a couple more things. Brittany gave me a short essay to read here. So Helicon West is made possible by our generous sponsors, and also thank you to Brittany who planned all of this but cannot be here right now. Helicon West is made possible by our generous sponsors and by the community we serve. So to help us stay in person until the new Logan Library is built, which is soon, Joseph's nodding, not to mention hydrated and caffeinated, there are several ways to make a donation. You can scan our QR code and make a donation on PayPal. There's also a jar you can put change in on your way out. So help us continue to bring free literary events for our community. If something moves you, if coffee revives you, if you got a very good date out of this evening, consider leaving a tip to keep a good thing going. You can also support Alyssa Quinn by purchasing a copy of her book online, and I'm sure she will also be happy to mail you her signature or talk to you after the event. All right, so now I get the great pleasure of introducing our reader tonight. Alyssa Quinn graduated from Utah State University in 2016, earning a BA in English and being named the Outstanding Creative Writing Student of the Year, the CHaSS Valedictorian, the CHaSS Scholar of the Year, and the recipient of the Joyce Kinkead Outstanding Thesis Award. She went on, then after undergrad, she went on to earn an MFA in creative writing at Western Washington University, where she also worked as the editor for Bellingham Review. She's currently a fifth-year doctoral candidate at the University of Utah, where she has taught composition and creative writing, worked as an editor with the journal Quarterly West and the small press FC2, and been the recipient of the Burton Scholarship, the Steffensen Cannon Scholarship, and the Snow Fellowship. Her prose chapbook, which you can also buy online, Dante's Cartography, was published in 2019 by the Cupboard Pamphlet, and her debut novel, Havilus, was recently published with Dzanc Books. Her short work has been published in Ninth Letter, Passages North, Cream City Review, The Rupture, Wigleaf, Mid-American Review, Brevity, and a lot of other places. Please put your hands together for Alyssa Quinn.
Thank you so much, Millie, and thank you, Sean and Joseph and everybody for being here. It's really hard for me to say exactly how much this community means to me and has meant throughout my entire undergrad and beyond, but it's an awful lot. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited to read to you a little bit from my new novel, Havilus, which at its core is a book about the origin of human language. And human language, how it evolved, is an unanswered and most likely unanswerable question, which is what novelists thrive on. There's a quote from Noam Chomsky that I include as an epigraph at the beginning of the book, and he says, "It may be important for us to know where we came from, but if we can't answer that question scientifically, we can't answer it. If you want to tell stories, well then, tell stories." So, here I am. Havilus takes place in an anthropology museum, look at that one, that converts into a disco club every night to raise funds. And believe it or not, the Natural History Museum of London is actually doing this right now, this fall. So I think I gave them a really good publicity idea, potentially. The story follows a young woman named Lucy as she moves through this museum/nightclub. And interwoven with the scenes of Lucy, there are a series of museum exhibit captions, like you would find in a museum, such as something like that, but like more interesting than that. And these exhibit captions all have to do with a series of artifacts related to human evolution or to the origin of human language. There are lots of skeletons in the book, also several ghosts, so it's fun to get to read it right now right before Halloween, and I apologize if you get a little bit scared. I'm going to start off reading just the first few pages of the book. The museum is a discotheque. From every 9 o'clock p.m. to 2 o'clock a.m., display cases slosh violet with light, and the wall text bulges and strobes. "Martini, please," says a woman, and a martini appears. With a twist, she says, and now there is a curl of lemon ribbon. She fingers the wide aperture of her glass, little trill of acrylic nail, and thinks of how wonderfully language sometimes works. "Cigarette?" asks a friend. "Yes, please." The flick of a Zippo, sad sweet smoke of tobacco and clove, paper crackling to ash. Exhibit, Olduvai Hominid 7. Here we have the type specimen of the species Homo habilis, earliest member of the genus Homo. Also known as OH7, this specimen consists of a fragmented lower mandible with 13 teeth, isolated maxillary molar, 2 parietal bones, and 21 finger, hand, and wrist bones. He is a boy, 12, maybe 13. Look closely, and you'll see the Serengeti sunrise, grasses bloody with light, the naked child running across the plain. He chases an egret, wings sheer against a pink shock of sky. He lifts his face, follows the bird until it dissolves into light. The sun is mounting. He closes his eyes against its brightness, but leaves his face still lifted, lets his eyelids warm. Then some clockwork inside of him says, time to go home. So home he goes, back across the plain, down the ravine near the river. He has come this way many times. The land knows his footfalls, but today, somehow, is different. Perhaps he loses his footing down the steep side of the ravine. Perhaps he is startled by a wildcat, its teeth jutting like icicles over a lip. Or perhaps, who knows, but somehow today the boy dies. He dies, and his family comes looking, and over his body his mother keens, moans, bellows a wordless loss into the air. A cloud of swallows startles from a nearby tree, flits away like a puff of smoke. The family does not bury their child. Such rites do not exist, but they move his body off, away from where they live and eat and flake stones into tools. And the body lies there in this soil, let's say next to a patch of African violets. Why not? And his flesh rots off, nails and teeth loosen and drop, organs turn to liquid. He stinks. Eventually, all the soft tissue is gone, leaving just skeleton behind, the bones disarticulated, untouching, the body no longer bound by ligament and sinew, and finally the bones too begin to go, the acidic soil making a slow meal of them until, at some point, let's say fortuitously, a volcano 20 miles from the ravine erupts, soaks the earth in soft, hot ash. And this happens again and again over the millennia. And though most of the boy's skeleton dissolves to dust, certain parts are preserved. A mandible with 13 teeth, an isolated molar, 2 parietal bones, 21 finger, hand, and wrist bones. And these bones stay packed in their volcanic ash for ages until, let's say miraculously, a team of researchers cuts into the earth and so slowly, with such care, reveals the boy's old bones. They pull him from the earth at last, once again under the Serengeti sun, and they call him OH7, Olduvai hominid 7, and estimate he would have had a brain size of 663 cubic centimeters had he lived to maturity. Wow. And they named him the type specimen of a brand new species, Havilus, Homo habilis, handy man. They touch his mandible with gloved fingers and imagine his life, his death, imagine their DNA spiraling back toward him across this gulf of time. The woman's name is Lucy. She has drained her martini, smoked the last of her clove, and now watches the bodies dancing around her, their blue slick of sweat, silver fistfuls of disco light spangling skin. At the center of the floor, the bodies merge and fuse, a silhouetted mass with a million limbs. Her friend, Dina, stirs a whiskey ginger and says, "It's radical, I know, but we were facing bankruptcy, plus the bones were getting lonely." Lucy can feel the music beating in her pelvis, her bones humming like a bass drum. "It was not an easy sell, let me tell you," says Dina. "Our board of directors are practically fossils themselves." Dina is dressed in her red curator's blazer and checkered black and white shorts, the long black mop of her hair pulled back into a thick ponytail. Blue light smears her cheek like oil paint, darkening in the recesses of her jawline, the curve of her nose. "Come on," she says, tosses back the last of her drink, and grabs Lucy's hand. "Let's dance." There was one particular theory of the origin of human language that inspired this book to begin with. And that's a theory by the anthropologist Eric Gantz. And his theory goes something like this. Many, many millennia ago, a group of prelinguistic proto-humans comes across some object of desire, probably the carcass of an animal. And as they come across this object, all of them simultaneously reach out to take it. And then they notice that everybody else is also reaching out to take it. And they realize that for any one of them to do so would initiate a violent conflict that could jeopardize their lives. And so their arms pause in mid-space. And what Gantz imagines happening is that the hands that were reaching out to grab instead convert into hands that are reaching out to point. And in his theory, that's the first act of language. It's a gestural language, and its effect is to defer violence. And this image, when I read about it, really struck me powerfully for a number of reasons, and I knew that I wanted to write a book about it. So that's how it emerged. In my book, the animal that features in this scene when language originated is some species of antelope. And there is a bone from this antelope that shows up throughout the book as an artifact in this museum. So I'm going to go ahead and read the exhibit here where that bone first appears. Exhibit: Antelope metapodial bone. 1.5 million years old. Behind the glass, a soft and woody brown, eroded edges revealing a lattice of loam. Think back to when this bone was carcassed. Wide gash in tawny fur, blood thick and dripping. The smell. Nearby, a dozen proto-humans, male, lift their heads and catch the coppery whiff of meat. They follow it to its source and find the animal, newly dead and unclaimed, splayed and red and waiting. All that gorgeous meat, that creamy marrow. The proto-humans' pupils swell and saliva floods their mouths. But there are too many of them for this small corpse, and each one starts toward the prize, hands up and out, then stops. Looks around the circle of large dark eyes and sees desire mirrored everywhere. They pause, hands hanging, and think of what is about to happen, what has already happened so many times, the bashed skulls and shredded skin, and somewhere deep inside them, some quirk of DNA, some evolutionary adjustment whispers, stop. And then the hands that lifted with the intention of grabbing, claiming, seizing, are instead only pointing to the carcass at their center. To point. To point is not to grasp. It is to say this, this, this. To substitute gesture for meat, for marrow, for blood. To posit a mind not your own, a gaze not your own. It is to become suddenly human. There's one other thing, though, that Gantz imagines happening in this moment that's important in the book, and that's something called mimetic desire. Mimetic desire refers to the fact that humans want what they think other humans want. And so in this instance, the fact that all these proto-humans notice everyone else wanting this object makes it even more desirable, even as it becomes forbidden, which for Gantz is the origin of the sacred, and this object takes on a kind of sacred power. This is, of course, advertising 101, right? If we think that Taylor Swift finds Diet Coke desirable, then we also will find Diet Coke desirable. But what Gantz imagines actually this is really happening in this moment is that we don't actually want the Diet Coke itself. What we really want is to actually become Taylor Swift. And we imagine that obtaining a Diet Coke might enable that to happen. And so this shows up throughout the book. There are a lot of doubles in the book for this reason, as we see characters seeking their identities in the images of other people. This is especially true for Lucy, who, because of a variety of childhood traumas, including the fact that she was abandoned as a toddler and never knew her parents, struggles to develop a self-concept, struggles to think of herself as a cohesive being. As you'll see in this scene that I'll read, which consists of a flashback to Lucy's youth. Sophomore year of college, in bed with her girlfriend Jane, Lucy is awake, has been awake, listening to Jane breathe for 2 hours, has rolled from her stomach to her back, to her stomach, to her side, to her stomach, has curled up next to Jane, slotted against her body like a stacked spoon, then peeled away, too hot and sweat sticky, has stared at the ceiling, has tried not to watch the clock, has snuck a sidelong glance at the clock after all, panicked to see the numbers sliding swiftly by and sleep no nearer. Tiredness is an itch cinched around her eyeballs, but as tired as she is, she still can't sleep. Lies on her side, hand under her head, and stares at Jane's ear, the lobe attached, cartilage coiled in the shape of an embryo. And Lucy is thinking, not for the first time, of the baby they'll never have, the baby that will not have Jane's ears and her nose. She doesn't want kids, knows this for certain, but still she sometimes does things like stare at her girlfriend's earlobe and think of the DNA curled up inside their cells, DNA that has come down to them across the eons, genes that have morphed and mutated and made it all the way here only to stop. It doesn't bother her much. She feels already cut off from the thread of heredity. The lineage spooled in her chromosomes is an abstract concept to her, the line like something already snapped. But she does think about it, staring at the whirl of skin and shadow that is her lover's ear. And she does not feel sad so much as sealed off, contained, like a house locked up, its blinds shut tight. Lucy has never known herself much at all. The inside of her mind always feels inaccessible to her, a blank, dark space. She feels far too deep inside of it to have any sense of what it is, to be able to trace its contours, chart its topography. In conversation with others, she finds herself saying things she doesn't think she believes, in the hope that one day she might accidentally stumble onto something that rings true. Lying supine on a blanket on a friend's driveway one summer night, a melting tub of orange sherbet, 2 large spoons. Her friend is reading from a glossy magazine. What would make you feel most confident on a first date? A bold red lip, or B, a spritz of your favorite perfume? Or like when she looks in the mirror for too long and becomes suddenly hyper-aware of the person looking back at her, a person whose privacy she feels she is invading, a person she feels self-conscious around, a person whose face is not her face, no, surely not, and she feels half wild with anxiety upon realizing she is trapped in the skin of this person. How would your close friends describe you? A, adventurous and outgoing, or B, sweet and thoughtful? The tub drips sticky orange melt onto the quilt. The navy sky is speckled with gnats. A, says Lucy. B, A, B, B, A, B, A. So the book continues in this way, alternating between museum exhibits and scenes of Lucy's present and her past. And as the night progresses, Lucy and her friend Dina peel away from the crowd and start venturing deeper and deeper into this museum, where things start to get a little bit weird. I'm going to read a few scenes now around the middle of the book, where you'll see our old friend the antelope bone show up again, and also see some of the dynamics of mimetic desire at play. This scene, or these scenes, all involve taxidermy. And when I was researching for these scenes, I went down to this incredible taxidermy museum in St. George that you should definitely go visit if you can, because it's so strange and so bizarre. And yes, again, a little bit spooky, so prepare yourself. Dina, cross-legged on the floor, a bloody mass of animal in her lap, has a blade and is scissoring away its skin, lifting it from muscle like a pale, glossy peel. Connective tissue stretches like cellophane. Blood vessels bulge. Around her are skeletons of wire and wool, 100 antelope forms waiting for their skins. She tugs hard on the hide, pulling it inside out. The skin is like a sleeping bag or a glove, she says. A smudge of blood on her face. Down to the hooves now, peeling the skin right past the cloven toes. She grunts as she rips. Another leg, then another and another. Next to the head, pulling the skin over it like some slick turtleneck. Now I will cut carefully around the eyes so as to preserve the lashes and lids. Inside the head of the animal is another head, this one slippery and red. She cuts carefully, face so close her nose brushes blood. Then with a final slice, the lips come off and the whole hide is free. She brandishes it back like a drawn curtain, the form in her lap fetal and raw, the skin dripping from her fist. She fits the pelt around the mannequin, tugs it tight like pulling on jeans. From her pocket she draws needle and thread. What is an antelope, she asks, and begins to stitch. Lucy wanders the gallery as Dina prepares her specimens. The ones she's finished stare with eyes of glass, arranged in various lifelike poses, mid-air leap or neck bent to graze, each with its name affixed: Springbok, Hartbeest, Klipspringer, Dick-Dick. Fake rock and fake grasses, the walls painted with blue and cloud. A giant eland on a ledge, its mouth open, a fake tongue disappearing into the black illusion of a throat. The stiff jaw, the dark lips, plastic glistening as if with saliva. Lucy stands staring into this dark animal mouth, the cave of it. Mandible, a useless hanging hinge, and she believes suddenly not just in the existence of its throat, but that its throat continues eternally, unending chasm, that she could insert a hand into this ungulate's gaping mouth and lose it there forever. The parted lips, the stony tongue, the small, flattish teeth. She squints and peers, but can make nothing out. No back to this mouth. And there is a mounting horror. Beside Dina, on the floor, a pile of fake tongues, pinkish, blackish, and the eyeballs, their skewed pupils roiling. Exhibit, antelope metapodial bone revisited. To point is to touch what you cannot. The circle of large dark eyes, desire mirrored. How much of life consists of craving, and how much of fear? The proto-humans watching each other, careful and close. The clearing brims with hunger and the stink of meat. In their bodies is the urge to fight, to kill, to do whatever it takes to possess this carcass. Never before has a species posed such a risk to itself. Never has a species wanted this fiercely. And so the sign is offered. Violence is deferred, and if this happens once, it will happen again and again. The sign repeated, pointing to objects of desire in order to speak about them, and in speaking, survive. To point is to share a world with another. To point is to direct another's gaze, to say, look, and believe they might see what you see. To point is to love. It is to touch what you cannot, and lose what you might have held. And now Dina is stitching a real bone into the leg of the specimen. Tiny holes at the bone's edge, through which she threads her needle. Bone dust and a drill on the floor. Should you be doing that? Asked Lucy. To reassemble history is our task, Dina replies. She sews faster, needle going in great loops. The animal she has chosen is pure white, and the empty hide takes the shape of a ghost, its discarded body off to one side. The springbok, says Dina, not looking up, is the sole member of the genus Antidorcus, which is derived from the Greek anti, meaning opposite, and dorcus, meaning gazelle. The springbok is an antelope that is not a gazelle. The antelope is an ungulate that is not a cow. All this negative taxonomy. She stops sewing, looks up, nose still bloody. That was good. Write that down, will you? Exhibit. White springbok with incorporated metapodial bone. The springbok is the sole member of the genus Antidorcus, which is derived from the Greek anti, meaning opposite, and dorcus, meaning gazelle. The springbok is an antelope that is not a gazelle. The antelope is an ungulate that is not a cow. All this negative taxonomy. Taxonomy translates as arrangement of names, while taxidermy is arrangement of skin. A species whose genus was created specifically to classify it is considered a sui generis species, meaning of its own kind. Also, inserte sedis, of uncertain placement, used for names that cannot be placed in the current taxonomic scheme, isolated, lacking genealogy and history, a whole language to describe the failures of this naming. No sooner is the bone secure in its new body than Dina cries and tears it back out. There is a sound of snapping threads like something being popped from a socket. The animal's skin hangs frayed and loose from its leg. Dina weeps, cradles the bone to her chest like a child. There is only a snarl. Her lips curl back and she bares her teeth. The image of Dina with the bone, holding it, owning it. She lunges. She seizes Dina's head in her hands and rips at the long, dark braids. She claws at Dina's face, leaves thin blood down her cheeks like tracks cut by tears. Dina throws the bone, grabs Lucy's face and returns and digs thumbs into eyeballs, feels the soft orbs below the lids, feels the way she could push down, press and pop, feels the way this is just another skin to be peeled from the body, feels something in her throat rising to fill her mouth. It is a scream. 100 miles off in the Appalachians, a pair of white-tailed deer rot on the forest floor. Their antlers locked, their eye sockets inches apart. They are mirror images of bone. Like the pair of bucks in Ohio, pair of bull moose in the Yukon, pair of kudu in Botswana, antlered together, face to face, frantic until they die. Such lethal symmetry. And the two women in this museum that is a discotheque. Faces close enough they might fuse and merge, might become one. But at the same time, what distance is between them, what unbridgeable gap. How Lucy can sometimes see herself in these eyes, a bulged reflection, but can never see herself through these eyes, can never look out from behind them. How Dina is never more than surface to her, the whole world a mere collection of surfaces. As spooky as taxidermy is, and I think it is very spooky and endlessly fun to write about, the real horror of this book is what humans will do in the name of their desires. What happens when language isn't enough to defer violence. When I decided that I was going to write about human evolution, I knew that that would involve writing about East Africa, where the earliest humans evolved. And so I started researching the history of paleoanthropology in that region, especially the life of the British paleoanthropologist Mary Leakey. Mary Leakey and her husband Lewis, who did a lot of work in East Africa, including Mary and her son Jonathan discovered OH7, the fossil that I read about at the beginning, and named the species Homo habilis. But I knew that if I was going to write about Mary, I was also going to have to write about the colonial context in which she was doing her work, and about the ethics of being a white British researcher working on colonized African soil. So I started researching the history of British imperialism in East Africa as well. And one thing that I learned about was the Uganda Railway. I've got a very blurry photo up here. This was a railway built in East Africa by the British Empire around the turn of the 20th century, for which over 30,000 indentured laborers were recruited from India and taken to Africa to build it. And over 2,500 of those laborers died working on the railroad due to really brutal working conditions, violence, racism, and other things that they faced. So I decided that I was going to write an exhibit caption weaving together the story of this railroad with the story of Mary Leakey. And this exhibit stretched to be the longest of the book. It's almost 70 pages long. As I was researching these two things and you know, alternating back and forth, I discovered something that seemed incredible to me. And what I learned was that Mary Leakey ended up in East Africa because she was married to Lewis Leakey, who was another British paleoanthropologist, and he was born and raised in Kenya. He was born and raised in Kenya because his parents moved there in 1902 to work as missionaries for the Church of England. And when they moved to Kenya, I've got a map here for you, they would have boarded a ship, sailed down to the Strait of Gibraltar, through the Mediterranean, through the Suez, into the Red Sea, and down around to the Arabian, and that red pin there is Mombasa on the coast of Kenya, where that ship would have docked. And when they got off of that ship, they boarded a railroad, and that train that they got on was the Uganda Railroad. And so these two things that I had been pairing metaphorically, it turned out they were very literally linked in truth. And when I learned this, I was astonished. I thought it was really remarkable and one of those uncanny connections that you find when you're doing research. Then I realized that it actually wasn't uncanny at all, and that in fact it was just imperialism working as it had been meant to work. That the Uganda Railway, which was completed a year before the Leakeys arrived in Kenya, was built precisely for people like them, missionaries, soldiers, merchants, colonial administrators, people like that, to travel there. And that it only struck me so powerfully because now I knew the invisible history behind that railroad and all the violence that had occurred so that people like the Leakeys could move easily through that space. And so that was just one example of how and why research is so important to my work, and why this book was such a strange and powerful experience to write. So I'm going to read a short scene from this exhibit. This is going to focus on the railroad laborers. It takes place at their rail camp near the Tsavo River in Kenya. (1896). There is a man missing. Evidence: a soiled dhoti at the river's edge, fabric heaped and coiled in a sign, its meaning unclear but ominous. They search. They find the missing man. They do not find the missing man. They find a body stripped of flesh, head and feet intact, skin pale and marble smooth, but the rest reduced to reddish bone. Torso torn to bloody shreds, limbs 4 grisly sticks. Around the corpse, paw prints, leonine and huge. The men wonder, at what point did death occur? How much can be removed from a man before he himself is gone? The camp simmers in fear. The foreman seizes his Winchester and strikes out into the bush, equipped with various ideas about himself, ideas about the steely glint of his rifle barrel, about what it means to lead and hunt and win. But he finds nothing, returns to camp empty-handed, assures his men there is nothing to fear. 3 nights later, a cry goes up in camp. Men shout, bang on empty kerosene tins, and the foreman with his Winchester comes running. Another man is gone. A monstrous grunt, brief, frenzied shriek, then nothing. The second corpse, when found, has the skin lifted from the face, teeth exposed in rabid grin. The men fortify their tents with ropes of thorn and sharpened pickets, but the attacks continue, bodies dragged from tents and devoured with impunity. Fires are lit in the barricades, oil tins clattered and banged, but the lions keep coming. The men grow reluctant to work, and the foreman must convince them that the faster the trap is built, the faster they can leave this place. For his part, the foreman grows frenzied. He stalks the scrubland nightly, straps himself into a tree to wait. But when the cry comes, it is too far off. He arrives to find nothing but a severed head and a few fingers, sends the teeth and a single silver ring to the man's widow in India. The next night he waits in a different tree, a goat tied to the trunk as bait. Rain falls and soaks them through. The goat bleats sadly in the dark. But this story is not going the way it ought. It is setting him up as a hero, some African Ahab, because yes, he does eventually kill them, a pair of maneless male lions, the Tsavo man-eaters. He shoots them full of holes and taxidermies their tattered skins, but not before forbidding the men to retrieve the scattered fragments of their comrades' bodies, forbidding any funeral rites, in the hope that the lions might return for the scraps. Not before the chief engineer issued a 1,000-pound reward for the beast's slaughter, ushering in swarms of officers on leave, wealthy sportsmen from England, all hoping to catch the devils. Unable to do so, they kill dozens of other lions in the area, and the camp reeks with badly cured pelts. One hunter slits open a lioness and finds a slick litter of embryos inside. They tumble out, wet, rubbery, and pink. The foreman is angry. He wants the lions for himself, builds a massive trap from discarded railway scraps, and sits inside, offering his body as bait. He believes he was born for this. He has developed a habit of rubbing his thumb round and round his gun muzzle, round and round. He imagines the beasts limp and bleeding, imagines skinning them, digging his hands into the still warm meat, slicing connective tissue until the lions are loosed from their shapes. But we will not give him this moment. We will leave him instead in his tree, rain wet, tied up, bound to a bleeding goat. We will let him exist there, in that damp absurdity. We will go instead to a sick man in his tent, whose friends fled at the sound of a low snarl. Too ill to move, he lies there on his cot, waiting for the lions. They never come, but he dies of fright anyway. We will go to the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, Illinois, where the Tsavo man-eaters reside, stiff and stained and badly stuffed, sold to the museum for $5,000. Above the sad diorama, the wall text reports that 35 men were eaten by the lions. The victims' names exist nowhere. Curators spend years analyzing a chip in one lion's tooth, wondering if this defect prompted it to resort to hunting humans. Decades of scholars are baffled at such brutality. The museum curator says, "It's astonishing that more than 100 years after their death, we can still be talking about not only how many people they ate, but differences in the behavior of the two animals, all from skins and skulls in a museum collection." When you think of the hundreds of thousands of specimens upstairs and all the stories they have to tell, the value of museum collections is just astronomical. The foreman rubbing and rubbing his gun muzzle. The widow opening an envelope, tipping her husband's teeth into her palm. A man staring at his friend's severed hand, wanting only to set fire to it, loose its spirit to the sky, but instead being forced to watch it fester, rot, open up with holes. The tracks, advancing now at a panicked pace. All right, I think I have time for one last short exhibit. This comes very near the end of the book, and it goes back once more to our friend the antelope. And I have this cool image that I designed ready to send you out. Exhibit: Antelope metapodial bone revisited. And there will still be such violence, millennia of death, so many killed, and so often because men desire what others have. Language fails too many times, or else it works in all the wrong ways. But here, now, in the center of these humans, the red body, jeweled with fat and braided with vein, an object whose realness they affirm without touching, without owning. They lift their hands and point, the first time, the shared gaze. I know that you know, ability to posit a mind not your own. The many sacred objects, bones and stones and even hollow space, footprints in soil. They are so rarely actually there. A fossil is a trace of what once was, impression, echo, ghost. Organic matter rotted and gone, replaced by mineral trickle. But while you can never point at nothing, you can point to that which isn't there. Yes, yes you can. I have imagined you many times. Have you imagined me? We are both here inside these sentences. Yes, we are. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joseph. All right. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Let's give her one more round of applause. All right. So we've got a couple of readers here. I'm going to set this on the coffee table if other people would like to. We've got some room on the list. So we're going to start with Ron Jensen, Hannah Lee, and Izzy Fluer.
Hi.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Ron.
When we looked at Dewey Decimal System, the zeros are in German words with mysteries and facts. The 100 are the big P words, with speech sound, each word lacks. The two friends join in rhythm and methodology too. She hands on holidays, fairy tales, and man he can do. The 400 on giant dictionaries and the way that we talk. The 500 on scientists, like animals and rocks. The 600 on tame mammals, machines of all sorts. The 700 are on the arts, like drawing and sports. The 800 on jokes and poems and plays. The 900 on geography and the history of past days. The bees are the biographies and people who we adore. This is my Dewey poem. I hope to taught you more. This poem about Halloween fan. Now school be over, and will it be done? This is Halloween. We can have some fun. We'll put on our costumes, go from door to door, saying trick or treat and getting candy galore. Then we'll eat our teeth to our heart's content. When we get back home, we meet us so intent. What fun we'll have, and go out tonight. Go out now scored. Giving us advice.
Hello, friends. I have a spooky little poem for today, and I wrote it last year, but I've changed it a bit, and I'm quite fond of it. So, I'm very excited. It's called Skeleton Wife. I remember when I first saw you there decomposing. I was doing it then, too, but you made the whole thing look so graceful. The slow decay of your skin, the bluish tint, those long limbs splayed across the dirt of the hollow at unnatural angles in that place we had somehow found ourselves. I don't remember how. All I know is one day I woke up beside you, and there was a new life in our stillness, a new appreciation for companionship. My maggots were your maggots. Our flesh painted the red maws of those beasts that carved out our insides and carried off our bloated organs, those unimportant things. Time wore the rest away, split us open under the sun. I remember when I saw the first bone, the peak of your beautiful white rib and all that mess of flesh, like the arm of an angel reaching for God, like a blessing. I fell deeper in love with you with each strip of flesh torn away, each new bone revealed to the air. Time has passed, but your beauty is still as bright as it was that first day, that bloated awakening. I look into your ribcage and see God. Your skull is ageless, smooth like ivory. If you are the bride and I the bridegroom, this shadowed place is hollowed ground. I hold you full to bursting. And there is so much to see, so much to take in, and, well, I have no eyes. But I manage. I think whatever benevolent force gave me the kindness of tilting my head just so I can see you, your body, and how you wear this passage of time, the way your sweet head tilts towards the earth, away from me, unaware. Oh, darling, I could scarcely hear it when the others came to see you as well. I have no ears. But I heard the murmuring, the chanting, the strange lights. Then, God's mercy, you stood before me. Bones stacked on bones, and those eyes, always turned away from me, saw me for the first time. Do you remember that first glance? Did you know I had spent a lifetime watching you before you took a first glance at me? Did you feel the same from the start? No matter. I am content only to be by your side. These days spent beside you as you walk through the forest, like a ghost, unaided by skin, by tissue, by a helping hand. My jaw hangs open in awe, watches as you glide across the grass. I wonder, how was I so lucky as to have a life such as this? Just two 25-foot-tall skeletons side by side, and the world before us, under us, around us, and all of it on fire. You turn to face me, those perfect black eye sockets, the curve of your cheekbone. I reach for you, your bony hand in mine, yet you look away. I cannot. No, I watch you neck on a hinge, but all you care about now is the blood of the innocent. Oh, my dear, my beautiful mistress of mass destruction, my Persephone of the night. Please, darling, put the farmer down. Can't you see that I ache?
Hello. I wrote a spooky Halloween love poem for the same class about a year ago. And I've thought about it a lot and decided to write a part 2 for it. So I'll be reading both part 1 and part 2. It's called Among the Sycamore Trees. Very original. Okay. Among the Sycamore Trees. Take my hand and I'll take you home, to a bed of thorns that smells of rose, across a rug of flames forgot, where passion goes to burn and rot. Color me pale as your mother when she mistook absinthe for lemon-lime soda, for I am unable to tell the difference between your poison and your sweet ambrosia. You're disgustingly delicious when you drape yourself across that 1800s couch, a rotisserie chicken tied up in a bow ready to be pulled apart skin from bone. Your words send shivers down my spine as my hands send shivers down yours, and I can't help but wonder if the blood pumping your lips tastes better smudged across the surface. I am the knife to your steak, the needle to your vein, the aneurysm to your brain, the solve to your pain. Desire ebbs, delusion flows, and I'm caught in a riptide of reckless insanity, addicted to the way our eyes meet under the silver moon among the sycamore trees. And here's part 2. It's titled Among the Sycamore Trees, Part 2. You can see a lot of creative risk happening here. Take my arm and I'll guide you down through water's cold and muted sound, submerged in bruising blues of strain where beauty falls for glamoured pain. Call me the spring of Narcissus, for each moment you spend enamored by the crown of thorns atop your head, I'm drinking from your lips. You're deliciously disgusting when you kneel before your God, knees to bone, you plead for hand to lift your chin, your intuition masked as sin. Your eyes fall to the ground as my heart beats opposite yours, and I can't help but wonder if the phase of the moon could save us from this gloom. I am the ice to your burn, the sweet to your stern, the bite to your turn, the lesson to your learn. So curse the wind for sweeping you off your feet, heels overhead you flail in unkempt surrender, a marionette sentenced to falling in love with the puppet master. That is all, thank you.
All right, we've definitely got more spots and more time. I know that it's a little packed, so maybe someone wasn't able to get up and get the sign-up sheet, but would anyone like to be added? I'll do the teacher thing where I let you be quiet for a minute. Okay.
I'll go.
Thanks, Jay. I don't want to wrap it up too quick.
Since we're all reading our bad Halloween love poems, I'll go ahead and do mine too. If it loads. Okay. Mine is titled Fantasizing About My Ideal October Date, and it is quite cheesy. On my ideal October date, you would take me to a nearby Halloween-themed corn maze, and when we'd arrived, you would hold my hand as we approached the ticket booth, and an employee, who would be dressed as a very glittery Edward from Twilight, would slap wristbands on our arms like wedding bands on our ring fingers, because if we're entering a corn maze of this size, we'll practically be in there forever, so we might as well get married. The glittery Edward would also hand you a map, which you would toss into the trash because the only map you'd need is the map to my heart. Then we would enter the maze and wander aimlessly through the stalks, chatting about typical date stuff. How we think Edward was way too glittery in all the Twilight movies. How we both collect banana stickers. How we both regularly eat lasagna for breakfast, etc., etc. But then goosebumps would start to pop up on our skin, and each of us would wonder if our shared love of banana stickers is making us giddy, or if the very glittery Edward is stalking us from within the stalks, or if we are just becoming cold with the bone-tingling breeze of the late October eve. I would like to think we're just giddy, but I would eventually decide it's just the breeze, because the breeze would give us good reason to hug, and hugging would lead us to kissing, and kissing would lead us to realize that we are two literally lost lovers who found each other. We'd kiss and kiss, breathing life back into our frozen corpses, but then a staff member, who would be dressed as a very jacked Jacob from Twilight, would escort us out of the maze because apparently there is no PDA allowed. Apparently, that rule was listed on the map you threw away, but we could spin our unfortunate encounter like a spider's web. We could say that our love set us free from the harvest labyrinth, but you wouldn't have it. You would be so embarrassed that you would run back into the maze in hopes of never seeing me again, and I would stand at the entrance, my eyes welling with tears, and then a little crumpled piece of paper would blow across my boots, and I'd pick it up and unfold it, immediately recognizing it as the map of the maze, the map of an anatomical heart, your heart. But I would not chase you. I would be too stiff and cold to search every artery and vein of the maze. Instead, I would hobble to the concession stand and drown my sorrows in apple cider, and I would eat as much caramel corn and Halloween cookies as my wallet would allow. Then I would go home, crawl into bed, my stomach aching. Then I would curl up into the fetal position like an animatronic Renesmee. Yes, I would have a tummy ache from all the caramel corn and cookies, but it would really be for you that I ache.
That got me. Thank you so much, Jay. All right. If anyone would like to read, speak now or forever hold your peace. We still have plenty of time. But this has been a wonderful, surprisingly Halloween-themed reading. So thank you to Alyssa, Ron, Hannah, Izzy, and Jay. This has been really amazing. And I want to invite everyone to our next Helicon. It is the USU Bullpen Creative Writing Club, which is exciting. It's November 10th at 7, and it's at the Annex, which is 64 Federal Avenue. So not far away, but not here. Readers will include Eliza Taylor, Audrey Johansson, James Ashby, Michael Skillings, Amarutha Smith, Jay Payne, and Hannah Smith. All right, so let's give it up for our readers one more time. Thank you all so much for coming, and enjoy some coffee on your way out.